Solitude is strength. To depend on the crowd is weakness. There comes a moment when isolation stops feeling like emptiness and starts feeling like power. When you walk alone long enough, something changes. You stop searching for direction outside yourself. You stop chasing approval, noise, and validation. You begin to realize that solitude was never punishment, it was preparation. The silence that once felt heavy now sharpens you. It strips away confusion until all that remains is focus, clean, unshakable, disciplined focus. This is where the transformation begins. When you learn that being alone is not a disadvantage, but the greatest leverage you'll ever have. The modern world is loud. It demands reaction, comparison, distraction. People confuse visibility with value and noise with progress. But the Stoic understands that mastery requires distance. The path to clarity begins where interruption ends. Every great mind, every person who truly built themselves, walked through seasons of isolation to find order. Walking alone is not withdrawal from life. It's the act of reclaiming your control over it. It's the decision to build something that cannot be taken away. Your inner structure, your composure, your sovereignty. Walking alone is not about rejecting others. It is about realizing that every victory is internal before it becomes external. When you learn to stand without support, to move without approval, and to stay calm without reassurance, you become unshakable. The one who walks alone builds strength that cannot be borrowed and wins that cannot be stolen. This is the Stoic path, not a life of isolation, but of complete independence, where peace, discipline, and direction are owned, not requested. When you learn to walk alone, you begin to see the world differently. You stop expecting understanding from people who have never walked your path. You no longer wait for validation or permission. You realize that the discipline to move forward without applause is the foundation of every lasting victory. Solitude is the environment where a person is stripped of illusions. It removes the noise that disguises weakness as strength and movement as progress. When you walk alone, the mirror of your own mind becomes unavoidable. It reflects what is real without distortion, and that confrontation builds truth. The Stoics saw solitude as the laboratory of character, a place where the individual faces themselves without the distractions of the crowd. Most people fear being alone because it reveals the condition of their thoughts. Silence exposes how much noise they depend on to avoid reflection. When the noise fades, what remains is the raw self, the habits, the beliefs, the discipline or lack of it. In solitude, a person either breaks under that weight or refines themselves through it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Walking alone is not withdrawal, it is a return. It is the act of stepping back into the command post of your mind, where clarity replaces confusion and focus replaces drift. When you walk with others, their pace becomes your limit. Their opinions begin to shape your standards. The crowd pulls you toward mediocrity because it cannot tolerate individual clarity. Walking alone removes that gravity. It allows your thoughts to rise without distortion. Your actions become clean because they are yours alone. Discipline deepens when you walk alone. There is no one to motivate you, no one to hold you accountable, no audience to impress. Progress depends entirely on your internal order. The absence of external validation hardens resolve. You begin to act from principle rather than approval, from conviction rather than comfort. The Stoic path has always been solitary, not in the sense of isolation, but in independence of thought. Epictetus taught that the highest freedom is mastery over one's own impressions. This mastery demands solitude because clarity cannot coexist with constant external input. The mind must learn to stand still amid chaos. When you walk alone long enough, the mind transitions from noise to structure. Thoughts become tools, emotions become signals, and time becomes measured by what you build, not what you consume. The external world stops being a reference point. Your internal standard becomes the only measure. This level of independence changes how you experience success. You stop chasing it in public spaces. You build it in silence and reveal it only through action. People will call it luck or mystery, but it is the result of years of private discipline. Every step taken in solitude compounds into strength that cannot be seen until it manifests as inevitability. Walking alone teaches patience. The world runs on urgency, but solitude recalibrates time. You begin to understand that direction is more important than speed. The person who can remain steady while others rush will always outlast those who burn out chasing temporary gains. In solitude, emotional control becomes necessity. Without it, the mind turns against itself. The Stoics trained themselves to be unmoved by circumstances. To walk alone requires the same endurance, to observe emotion without being enslaved by it. Each day becomes a test of composure under isolation. Those who walk alone develop a different kind of strength, one that does not depend on recognition. They learn to endure boredom, doubt, and uncertainty without abandoning their path. They stop seeking comfort from the crowd and start drawing power from self-respect. The modern world glorifies connection, yet suffers from fragmentation. People share endlessly but understand little. Constant interaction drains attention. Solitude restores it. The person who can detach from digital noise gains a mental edge that most have lost. The ability to be unreachable has become the new luxury. Isolation, when used correctly, is not absence. It is concentration. It gathers scattered energy into directed force. Every hour alone becomes a deposit into mastery. When your energy is no longer dispersed by distraction, your focus becomes a weapon. That focus sharpens identity. Walking alone refines perception. You begin to see what others overlook, the subtle patterns of thought, the impulses that govern reaction, the weaknesses hidden under comfort. You start predicting failure in others because you have studied it within yourself. Awareness replaces judgment. A Stoic walking alone does not withdraw from life. They engage with it cleanly. They move through the world without attachment, participating without dependence. Solitude teaches balance between involvement and detachment. You learn to give effort without losing yourself in outcomes. When you become comfortable in solitude, your relationship with fear changes. The fear of rejection, loss, or uncertainty loses control over you. Once you have survived your own silence, no external threat feels overwhelming. This is the foundation of Stoic courage, the ability to act without the need for reassurance. People who rely on company for motivation are temporary in their discipline. When the group fades, so does their will. But those who train alone build permanence. Their foundation is internal, immune to external fluctuations. They do not need witnesses to sustain their effort. To walk alone is to assume full responsibility for direction. There is no one to blame, no one to depend on, and no one to save you from stagnation. This weight creates power. When every outcome rests on your discipline, excuses die. You begin to operate from a different reality, one where action defines worth. Self-respect becomes your compass. You stop compromising for approval. Each decision is filtered through the question, does this align with who I aim to become? The clarity of solitude sharpens that filter until your behavior becomes principle in motion. Silence becomes an ally. It cleanses emotional residue and organizes thought. The mind starts functioning like a blade, focused, direct, precise. Words reduce, actions increase. The person who can hold their focus without speaking demonstrates control that cannot be faked. The Stoic concept of the inner citadel describes this exact state, a fortress within the mind where peace is maintained regardless of external storms. Walking alone is the process of constructing that citadel brick by brick through choices, routines, and self-discipline. Once built, it cannot be taken by force. To win alone is to master endurance. The journey tests patience, will, and purpose. It demands that you find meaning in repetition and strength in simplicity. You realize that true growth happens quietly, without announcement. The absence of recognition becomes proof of sincerity. Many people claim they want peace, but they surround themselves with chaos. They confuse attention with importance. A person walking alone learns the opposite. That importance comes from substance, not visibility. Peace is not given. It is maintained through constant internal order. When you learn to move alone, you stop negotiating with weakness. You stop explaining your vision to those who cannot understand it. You stop diluting your goals to fit social comfort. The path narrows, but it becomes clear. Clarity always requires sacrifice. Every period of solitude eventually transitions into clarity of purpose. When distraction fades, direction emerges. You begin to see patterns in your habits and precision in your thoughts. Discipline becomes natural, not forced. You act with rhythm because your actions are aligned with your principles. Winning alone changes how you measure success. You no longer chase approval, comparison, or recognition. Success becomes internal consistency, doing what you said you would do, regardless of who is watching. This internal measure produces lasting peace because it cannot be taken away. Those who win alone develop quiet confidence. It doesn't need expression. It radiates through conduct. They move with stillness because their strength is internalized. The Stoics understood that restraint signals power, that control over impulse is greater than control over others. In solitude, you begin to study your weaknesses with honesty. You stop hiding from them and start shaping them into strength. The process is uncomfortable but pure. Growth that happens unseen carries no vanity. It is built from truth, not performance. When a person commits to walking alone, distractions lose appeal. Gossip, comparison, and envy dissolve because focus consumes them. Life simplifies into what matters: work, growth, self-respect, and contribution. This reduction is liberation. Every Stoic understood the power of reduction. To remove what is unnecessary is to strengthen what remains. Solitude applies that principle to life itself. You strip away noise, obligation, and dependence until all that is left is essence. That essence becomes unshakable. Winning alone does not mean isolation from humanity. It means alignment with purpose. You can engage with people from strength instead of need. You connect through clarity, not confusion. Relationships become choices, not dependencies. A person who has walked alone long enough begins to project a different presence. They no longer rush, argue, or seek approval. Their silence carries weight because it comes from control. Their movement inspires because it is deliberate. They have nothing to prove because they have already proven it to themselves. Walking alone turns solitude into advantage. It refines your time, your mind, and your actions. You become efficient without trying because distractions no longer compete for your attention. The noise that once ruled you now becomes background to a focused existence. In solitude, the Stoic finds freedom. Freedom from reaction, expectation, and external judgment. Each decision is measured through reason. Each action aligns with principle. This creates an unbreakable feedback loop between thought and conduct. the mark of a person who governs themselves. The modern world rarely rewards solitude, but it always respects results. Those who can operate unseen will always control those who depend on attention. The world is built by those who are too focused to seek recognition while building. The applause comes later, and it no longer matters. When you walk alone, you learn that consistency is the highest form of strength. Talent fades, luck shifts, but discipline compounds. Each quiet day of effort builds momentum invisible to the impatient. By the time results appear, the work has already defined you. A Stoic walking alone carries their standard within. They live by principle even when unseen. Their private conduct matches their public image. That integrity builds confidence that cannot be manufactured. It is the quiet certainty of self-command. To win alone means to remove dependence on external outcomes. You focus on execution, not applause. You take pride in control, not attention. Each decision reinforces identity until character becomes destiny. Every step taken in solitude is an investment in permanence. The person who walks alone is building something beyond convenience, a life guided by order, not impulse. The foundation becomes so strong that no setback can erase it. When solitude becomes mastery, the world becomes optional. You can engage or withdraw without losing center. You no longer chase belonging because you have built inner alignment. This is the highest form of strength, the ability to be complete in yourself. To walk alone and win alone is to live by design. It is to understand that control over self is control over fate. The Stoics called this harmony with nature, living in accordance with reason and purpose. When you reach that state, solitude is no longer loneliness. It is freedom in its purest form. Power born from solitude becomes permanent when direction fuses with clarity. The one who walks and wins alone begins to understand that the ultimate form of dominance is self-command. The more ordered the inner life becomes, the less chaos from the outer world can intrude. Stability evolves into presence. Every movement carries the weight of someone who no longer negotiates with uncertainty. When independence matures, strategy replaces reaction. The Stoic thinker begins to see the architecture of cause and effect in everything. Choices become structural beams of a life built on principle. Emotion is reduced to data. Impulse becomes information. The person no longer spends time chasing comfort. They build momentum through repetition until discipline becomes identity. A mind refined in solitude does not need constant novelty. It draws energy from refinement, from taking what already exists and strengthening it until it becomes unbreakable. This mindset creates exponential results because nothing is wasted, not failure, not delay, not silence. Everything is material for improvement. Winning alone turns attention inward. You begin to notice patterns within yourself, how you respond under stress, how your mind reacts to challenge, how your body follows command. Awareness becomes total. From this awareness emerges control. From control, mastery. Those who cannot endure solitude remain slaves to circumstance. They are always waiting for motivation, for guidance, for signs of progress. The one who walks alone does not wait. They move. The act of moving without permission builds autonomy. Each decision taken in isolation becomes a declaration of independence. When the Stoic learns to move without audience, they develop a self-sustaining rhythm. Purpose becomes the metronome. Focus sharpens with every deliberate action. The distractions that once carried weight dissolve into irrelevance. The result is a quiet power that cannot be imitated. External rewards lose their appeal because internal order becomes its own satisfaction. Success transitions from an event into a constant state of alignment. The need for validation disappears because the individual's validation comes from the precision of their execution. This is how solitude matures into sovereignty. As mastery expands, detachment becomes natural. You begin to see the instability of external praise and the fragility of external judgment. Neither can affect the one whose peace is self-generated. The Stoic mind becomes a closed system, responsive, not reactive, deliberate, not distracted. To win alone means to replace dependency with design. You design your day, your habits, your responses. The external world becomes a field for application rather than a source of guidance. You move through it as an architect, not as an audience. You act from principle, not impulse. Each hour alone adds weight to identity. The repetition of self-discipline builds an internal gravity that draws success toward it. Results no longer surprise you because they are the natural outcome of consistent control. The person who operates like this cannot be rushed or broken. They function from structure, not emotion. When solitude reaches its highest form, it produces balance under pressure. The mind does not flinch, it calculates. The heart does not waver, it steadies. The world becomes a set of changing conditions, none of which alter the foundation of self. This is how Stoic composure translates into dominance. Many chase power through control over others. The Stoic seeks power through control over self. The former breeds instability, the latter breeds permanence. Influence becomes effortless when character is immovable. People sense the structure behind calmness. They recognize authority without a word spoken. To walk and win alone is to move through life as a self-contained force. You may collaborate, but never depend. You may share, but never dilute. The difference lies in control, in knowing that nothing external defines or sustains you. That knowledge is liberation. In this state, silence becomes language. You communicate through precision. Every act, every delay, every refusal carries meaning. The world begins to read your restraint as confidence and your consistency as strength. Without noise, your presence speaks clearly. When the Stoic wins alone, their victories are not loud. They are structural, changes in behavior, refinement of judgment, mastery of response. These victories compound invisibly until the person becomes untouchable. What was once discipline has become nature. There comes a moment when solitude no longer feels like effort. It becomes peace, a state of equilibrium between mind and world. You no longer retreat to be alone. You remain aligned wherever you stand. The environment stops dictating your conduct. You carry your order with you. This is the evolution of walking and winning alone, the transformation of solitude into sovereignty, a life directed by inner law, a mind unmoved by chaos, a heart steady through silence. The person who reaches this point no longer seeks control, they embody it. Influence born from solitude carries a different gravity. It does not demand attention, it commands it. The Stoic who has mastered isolation enters the world not as a participant of noise, but as the architect of order. Their movements are deliberate, their words scarce, their presence structured. Power has become quiet, and quiet has become influence. People sense when someone is not ruled by reaction. They can feel when another person's stability is not borrowed from circumstance. This energy cannot be fabricated. It is the residue of years spent in alignment. A Stoic who walks and wins alone radiates authority that others can feel before a word is spoken. True influence begins when control of self is complete. The mind no longer oscillates between emotion and reason. It functions as one. This unity projects strength. The person becomes consistent through chaos, immovable under pressure. Those around them instinctively orient to that stability. Leadership is not declared. It is demonstrated through composure. The world follows those who can remain calm in storms. Most react, few command. The Stoic leads not through volume, but through direction. Their discipline becomes a standard that others measure themselves against. They speak rarely, but when they do, their words reorganize the room. Authority, once internal, now reshapes the external. Influence through stillness is difficult to imitate because it is not a tactic, it is an outcome. Those who pretend composure break under strain. Those who have earned it through solitude endure without visible effort. It is the difference between acting strong and being structured. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. This principle extends to leadership. The Stoic does not mirror chaos with chaos. They remain measured, and that contrast dismantles disorder. To rule your own conduct is to disarm the instability of others. When you walk alone long enough, your aura changes. People notice the absence of urgency, the lack of emotional leakage. They respond to your steadiness because it offers what they lack, a sense of control. This is influence without performance. The Stoic has nothing to sell, and that authenticity attracts respect. Winning alone produces an energy that reorganizes environments. Teams align around those who emit certainty. Even without instruction, presence sets hierarchy. The disciplined mind becomes an anchor for others still lost in drift. Leadership emerges naturally from those who have conquered themselves. In this stage, influence is maintained through restraint. The urge to correct, argue, or prove diminishes. You begin to understand that control is preserved through silence. Each unnecessary word is a leak in authority. The Stoic communicates through precision, never through excess. The discipline that once built the self now builds systems. You begin to structure work, strategy, and people the same way you structured your mind, through order, rhythm, and accountability. Your habits become frameworks that others adopt. Leadership becomes architecture. Epictetus reminded his students that no man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom and leadership are one when self-governance is complete. The Stoic leader moves with detachment from outcome, yet total commitment to execution. This paradox is their power. They give full effort without emotional volatility. The influence of the Stoic does not depend on charisma. It depends on congruence. Their words and actions align. Their principles are visible through conduct. The result is trust, not the kind demanded, but the kind earned through consistency. When solitude transforms into sovereignty, the Stoic becomes immune to manipulation. Praise no longer seduces, criticism no longer wounds. The mind operates above the fluctuations of public opinion. This emotional autonomy is the highest status in any hierarchy. True leaders understand that control of others begins with control of energy. The disciplined mind enters every environment as a stabilizing force. While others seek attention, the Stoic seeks efficiency. Every movement has purpose, every pause has weight. To walk and win alone is to remove the need for performance. You no longer chase influence, you embody it. The absence of need makes you powerful because dependence is the root of weakness. Those who cannot exist without validation cannot lead. The Stoic leads because they could walk away and still remain whole. Influence deepens through repetition of calm conduct. People begin to associate you with stability. When you speak, they listen. When you decide, they follow. It is not control through force, but through reliability. Trust becomes a natural consequence of your structure. The Stoic leader understands the strength of patience. They do not rush outcomes. They cultivate them. They plant effort and wait with composure. Impatience weakens perception. Stillness strengthens it. This patience, forged in solitude, becomes foresight, the ability to see beyond immediate reaction. Winning alone refines how you engage with conflict. You stop seeking victory through domination and start achieving it through precision. The calm mind anticipates, adapts, and directs. Emotion becomes an instrument, not an obstacle. This clarity under pressure is what separates the transient from the timeless. Power expressed through calmness carries a deeper command. Loud authority fades. Quiet authority compounds. People remember the one who maintained control when others lost it. Influence is earned in those moments, not in comfort but in crisis. To the Stoic, leadership is not status but service. It is the art of maintaining internal order so that others can find theirs. The disciplined individual becomes an axis around which others rotate. Their composure stabilizes entire systems. They do not dominate people, they organize energy. As solitude evolves into mastery, and mastery into influence, one final truth emerges. Control of self is the only control that lasts. Everything external will change. Markets shift, loyalties break, fortunes reverse. But the person who governs themselves remains unmoved. This constancy becomes their power. Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." The Stoic who walks and wins alone has already become that standard. Their example replaces rhetoric. Their actions become philosophy in motion. The world bends toward those who require nothing from it. That is the paradox of true influence. Independence commands alignment. People follow strength that does not chase followers. The Stoic moves through life as both student and sovereign, teaching without words. When solitude reaches its highest form, leadership becomes effortless. The mind that no longer seeks control begins to radiate it. The person who no longer needs to prove power becomes its embodiment. This is the summit of the path, where walking alone no longer feels separate from the world, because mastery of self has become mastery of life itself. Endurance is the proof of discipline. The Stoic does not measure strength by intensity alone, but by consistency under difficulty. When the body is tired and the mind begins to resist, endurance reveals what remains of your structure. It is in fatigue that the truth of your training appears. Every effort without comfort is a dialogue with the self, a confrontation between conviction and weakness. Those who walk alone understand that endurance is not an act of passion, but of repetition. The mind that survives solitude has learned to continue without reward. Each day becomes a quiet rehearsal for adversity. You learn that quitting is not defeated by emotion, but by order, a system that operates even when the heart has no desire left. Resilience grows from exposure. The more you test yourself, the less fear remains. The Stoics never sought comfort, they sought control. Seneca taught that hardship introduces a person to themselves. The one who endures willingly gains power over those who wait for ideal conditions. Endurance is the difference between those who wish and those who build. Every difficult moment becomes training. Fatigue is not an obstacle, it is a teacher. When the body weakens, the mind must take command. When the mind weakens, principle must take command. This chain of command is the architecture of resilience. It ensures that progress does not depend on emotion. To endure is to defy the temporary. Most people move only when inspired. The disciplined move regardless of feeling. They understand that repetition is the parent of permanence. Each day of effort adds another layer to identity. The work becomes heavier, but so does the person. Walking alone strengthens endurance because it removes witnesses. When no one sees you, there is no applause to sustain you. Effort becomes pure. You continue not for praise, but for proof. Every completed task in silence becomes evidence of internal order. Epictetus taught that no man is free unless he can master his own will. Endurance is the physical manifestation of that idea. It is freedom expressed through persistence. To keep going when every instinct demands rest is to demonstrate control over impulse, the ultimate Stoic practice. The psychology of endurance is built on rhythm. The disciplined learn to move through repetition without boredom. Routine becomes meditation. Motion without reward becomes clarity. You begin to understand that the purpose of struggle is not comfort, but structure. There is a quiet satisfaction that comes only after exhaustion. When you have pushed past resistance, the mind stops negotiating. A deeper stillness takes over. The Stoics called this state apatheia, freedom from disturbance. It is not emotionless, it is unshakable. The modern world avoids discomfort. It celebrates ease, novelty, and distraction. Yet endurance is forged in the opposite. Those who voluntarily face difficulty develop strength that cannot be replicated by convenience. Their calmness under pressure separates them from those addicted to relief. To endure without complaint is to conserve power. Complaining wastes energy that could be used for correction. The Stoic remains silent in difficulty, not from denial, but from discipline. They focus entirely on what can be controlled: action, breath, posture, thought. Everything else dissolves. As you walk and win alone, you realize that endurance builds credibility. The world begins to trust those who persist. Consistency is the language of truth. The person who never breaks becomes the reference point for others. They do not inspire through words, but through visible resilience. Endurance demands structure in daily life. Sleep, diet, and training become aligned with purpose. There is no space for indulgence because indulgence fragments strength. Every repeated discipline reinforces identity. Over time, endurance becomes your natural state, not effort, but existence. Physical endurance and mental endurance are one system. The body trains the mind through repetition. The mind strengthens the body through direction. When both align, you become resistant to collapse. Pain becomes information, not panic. This unity is the Stoic's advantage. Endurance is a quiet form of defiance. It rejects the weakness that comes from comfort. It refuses to collapse under delay or monotony. The Stoic does not expect ease. They prepare for weight. By expecting difficulty, they remove its surprise and therefore its power. When fatigue comes, it exposes what is essential. In that state, every unnecessary thought fades. All that remains is purpose. Endurance burns away illusion and reveals character. The person who keeps moving under strain becomes indestructible because they have learned to function while breaking. There is dignity in repetition. Each small act done with precision under fatigue builds a kind of invisible authority. The Stoic understands that mastery is not achieved through occasional effort, but through continual alignment. Even in exhaustion, the disciplined person remains deliberate. The psychology of endurance transforms suffering into direction. Instead of resisting difficulty, the Stoic uses it. Pain becomes feedback. Struggle becomes calibration. Every challenge sharpens awareness. Every test becomes a proof of capability. To endure is to outlast your former self. The one who persists surpasses the one who hesitated. Growth is measured not by bursts of energy, but by the ability to maintain course when motivation has died. This constancy defines strength. There are moments when solitude and exhaustion meet. Those are the thresholds of transformation. The mind tries to escape through distraction, yet the Stoic stays still. They observe discomfort until it loses meaning. In that endurance, they become larger than pain. Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action. Endurance embodies this principle. The obstacle becomes fuel. The more resistance you face, the more power you generate by overcoming it. The Stoic does not shrink before hardship, they convert it. Endurance builds immunity to despair. Each test survived reduces the mind's tendency to panic. You start to perceive hardship as neutral, a condition to be navigated, not feared. This neutrality is power. It removes the emotional volatility that weakens most people. The disciplined learn to endure both success and failure. Both can corrupt if handled poorly. Success tempts softness, failure tempts withdrawal. The Stoic remains unmoved by either. Their measure of worth is effort aligned with principle, not outcome. When you walk alone long enough, endurance becomes identity. You no longer seek an easy path. You seek the right one. The distance no longer intimidates you because you have become the distance, steady, silent, unstoppable. There is a purity that comes with sustained effort. You begin to respect struggle rather than resent it. You recognize that endurance reveals everything, your limits, your fears, your hidden strengths. In facing these truths, you become immune to deception. Endurance grants patience. You stop expecting immediate results. You learn that slow progress is still movement. Each day builds on the last, quietly. While others chase novelty, you accumulate power through consistency. A Stoic endures without aggression. Their calmness is not passivity, but strength under control. They face adversity with precision, not through resistance, but through adaptation. Like a river carving stone, they persist without force, yet achieve permanence. The mind that endures becomes sharp. It learns to differentiate between pain that harms and pain that builds. It no longer fears effort because effort has become normal. The Stoic seeks no escape from challenge, only mastery through it. In endurance there is freedom. Once you have learned to outlast discomfort, it loses control over you. You become unpredictable to difficulty because it can no longer dictate your limits. Endurance is liberation through repetition. The one who endures becomes dependable. In a world ruled by impulse, they represent permanence. Their reliability becomes their reputation. Their stillness becomes their influence. They carry weight because they do not fall. Discipline without endurance is decoration. It lasts only until conditions change. Endurance makes discipline durable. It hardens resolve and transforms potential into certainty. Every person seeking mastery must pass through this crucible. The Stoic accepts fatigue as part of excellence. They know that to sustain greatness, one must tolerate monotony. They find rhythm in routine and strength in silence. Endurance turns repetition into refinement. Every day lived with endurance strengthens the foundation of identity. You stop needing motivation because you operate on principle. You stop fearing exhaustion because you trust your structure. The self becomes a system, balanced, deliberate, unbreakable. In the end, endurance is the essence of the Stoic path. It is the ability to remain aligned when everything around you shifts. To walk alone and win alone is to keep walking when the path disappears, guided only by inner order. The world may fluctuate, but the one who endures remains. Endurance deepens in silence. When fatigue becomes familiar, the mind begins to evolve beyond reaction. The initial discomfort that once signaled retreat transforms into data. You start to read exhaustion the way a strategist reads a map. It no longer intimidates, it informs. The Stoic who endures learns to interpret fatigue as feedback, not defeat. Monotony is the forge where mastery is proven. The undisciplined flee repetition because it lacks stimulation. The disciplined embrace it because it reveals precision. Every repetition clarifies motion, thought, and focus. Through monotony, chaos is removed. What remains is the exact measure of your discipline. Fatigue exposes the hierarchy within you. It shows whether emotion still commands thought or whether principle has taken command. When the body aches and enthusiasm fades, only structure remains. In that state, the Stoic discovers who is in control, the noise of impulse or the order of intention. The body begins to speak in endurance. Its language is pain, but its meaning is growth. Every signal of fatigue is a message to be translated, not resisted. The Stoic interprets discomfort with detachment, understanding that what burns today builds tomorrow. Pain is a craftsman when the mind remains steady. Those who seek comfort at every threshold never evolve. They abandon effort the moment ease disappears. The one who endures learns that comfort is the enemy of command. The will must be trained through exposure to controlled difficulty. Endurance refines willpower the way fire tempers steel. Emotional resilience grows through repetition of restraint. You learn to hold composure when the mind demands escape. You practice patience when the world rewards reaction. The ability to remain silent during frustration is the root of control. The Stoic understands that endurance is not loud. It is deliberate stillness under strain. When fatigue arrives, emotion amplifies. Small irritations grow into storms. The disciplined mind recognizes this distortion and corrects it. Instead of collapsing into reaction, it returns to principle. Breath, posture, purpose. This triad becomes the anchor through exhaustion. Fatigue teaches proportion. It humbles arrogance and clarifies priorities. When energy runs low, the trivial dies first. You learn to allocate focus only to what sustains progress. Endurance filters excess. It leaves only what matters. Monotony is sacred to the Stoic. It is the proof that discipline has transcended motivation. To repeat the same act with the same focus, long after desire has faded, is mastery. Through this repetition, control becomes instinct. The body and mind merge into a single rhythm governed by reason. Resilience requires respect for limitation, not denial of it. The Stoic observes fatigue without shame. They rest strategically, not emotionally. Recovery is treated as maintenance of the instrument, not indulgence. To endure long-term, balance is discipline in disguise. Endurance shapes perception of time. The impatient live in moments. The disciplined live in cycles. A day becomes a link in a chain, not an isolated event. The Stoic measures progress not by speed, but by continuity. Every consistent effort extends control over chaos. When fatigue turns mental, the temptation to self-doubt appears. The mind begins to question purpose, to seek validation, to crave relief. The Stoic does not argue with these thoughts, they observe them. Awareness dissolves distortion. Clarity returns when emotion passes like weather. Monotony is misunderstood by the weak as stagnation. In truth, it is refinement unseen. Each repeated act files away inefficiency until excellence becomes effortless. This invisible progress accumulates until the person appears transformed overnight. Endurance hides its rewards until they are undeniable. The Stoic trains to endure emotional erosion, the slow wearing away of patience caused by time and repetition. They build tolerance for waiting, for delay, for uncertainty. This calm under stagnation is rare power. It is the ability to hold course when results remain unseen. Fatigue can become an ally if the mind remains aligned. The body slows, but focus sharpens. Each motion becomes more deliberate. Every resource is conserved. Efficiency replaces intensity. This is endurance matured into intelligence. To endure monotony is to prove mastery over impulse. Boredom is the mind's rebellion against order. When you learn to stay steady through it, you break dependency on stimulation. Freedom follows because your behavior no longer depends on mood. Emotional endurance is the ability to experience pain without identification. The Stoic feels deeply but does not dissolve into feeling. Emotion passes through them without distorting perception. This neutrality allows action under pressure. It transforms suffering into precision. Fatigue reveals integrity. When effort yields no applause, your reason for action is tested. The person who continues without recognition is authentic. They work for alignment, not attention. Endurance filters motives until only purpose remains. To walk alone in fatigue is to meet your true self. Without noise or distraction, endurance becomes spiritual. You begin to sense the divide between who you were and who you are becoming. Each repetition under strain erases weakness and writes strength into the structure of your mind. The Stoic learns to love monotony because it is the clearest mirror of self-control. There are no surprises, no distractions, only the repetition of will. In that repetition, identity stabilizes. The noise of the world fades, replaced by the sound of steady effort. Mental endurance requires detachment from time. The disciplined do not count hours or days. They focus entirely on execution. This temporal neutrality eliminates anxiety. The work becomes the world. The mind becomes quiet. The fatigue of repetition eventually transforms into serenity. What was once struggle becomes rhythm. The Stoic reaches a point where consistency feels lighter than irregularity. Effort no longer feels forced. It feels natural. This is endurance evolved into harmony. To endure failure requires humility. Pride resists correction. Wisdom embraces it. The Stoic views failure as repetition of instruction. Each setback is a new line in the manual of progress. Endurance converts defeat into data. Monotony and solitude amplify each other. Together, they strip identity of performance. You are left only with conduct. What remains is the real measure of who you are, how you act when nothing distracts, entertains, or rewards you. Resilience expands when you stop negotiating with discomfort. Once you accept it as part of existence, you stop wasting energy resisting it. The Stoic treats difficulty as routine. Each obstacle is processed, addressed, and integrated. Emotion no longer dictates behavior. Fatigue becomes sacred because it purifies intention. Each repetition burns away weakness, doubt, and dependence. What remains is clean will, the kind that cannot be persuaded or bought. Endurance is transformation through attrition. There is no end to endurance, only evolution. The thresholds that once seemed impossible become ordinary. The limits of today become the warm-up for tomorrow. This continuous expansion of capacity is what defines the disciplined life. In monotony, creativity awakens. The quiet repetition of motion reveals new patterns, efficiencies, and insights. The Stoic understands that endurance does not dull the mind. It refines perception. Stillness sharpens awareness in ways chaos cannot. To remain calm under exhaustion is to possess ultimate control. Panic wastes energy. Stillness preserves it. The one who can hold composure while everything burns around them controls the battlefield, both internal and external. Endurance creates distance between impulse and action. That gap is where wisdom lives. The more you endure, the larger that gap becomes. Each decision passes through reason before expression. This is emotional sovereignty in motion. When fatigue deepens, you meet the shadow of resistance, that inner voice that whispers for ease. The Stoic listens, acknowledges, and continues. They do not argue with weakness, they outlast it. Endurance silences opposition through consistency. Every repetition of endurance strengthens belief in self-command. You begin to trust your ability to sustain. That trust becomes confidence, and confidence becomes composure. The person who trusts their endurance fears nothing. The Stoic path is not about escape from pain, but the redirection of its energy. Endurance converts suffering into motion, despair into focus. Through this conversion, the person transcends survival and enters mastery. Fatigue cannot defeat the one who accepts it. It only strengthens their patience. Monotony cannot break the one who understands it. It only clarifies their mind. Endurance cannot fail the one who lives it. It only proves their permanence. In the depth of endurance lies peace, the knowledge that nothing external can dictate your persistence. The one who endures is free. They move without rush. They work without doubt. They rise without noise. They have become unshakable. Clarity is born in isolation. The noise of the world fades only when distance is created. The Stoic understands that true perception cannot coexist with constant distraction. When you remove yourself from the crowd, you begin to see the architecture of your own mind. Every thought, every reaction, every impulse becomes visible in its raw form. This is where self-understanding begins. Isolation refines awareness. The absence of noise reveals the internal dialogue that governs your decisions. Most people never hear it because they are surrounded by voices louder than their own. Solitude exposes what has always been there: the structure of belief, the hierarchy of priorities, the depth of focus. Through isolation, illusion collapses. Clarity under isolation is not achieved through withdrawal alone. It requires order. The mind must be disciplined to observe without distortion. To see truth without preference or fear is the highest act of perception. The Stoic does not isolate to escape, but to recalibrate. Each hour alone becomes a mirror, reflecting the quality of thought. Restraint is the companion of clarity. The more you refrain from unnecessary reaction, the clearer you become. Every impulsive response clouds judgment. The disciplined learn to wait before they act, to listen before they speak, to measure before they move. This delay is not hesitation, it is power preserved. Aurelius wrote that the mind should be like a rock against which the waves continually break, yet it stands firm. This firmness is restraint, the ability to absorb impact without fragmentation. The Stoic practices this by remaining composed under provocation. The less you react, the more control you retain. Isolation teaches you what deserves energy. When you are alone, every action must justify itself. There is no performance, no audience, only consequence. The unnecessary becomes obvious. Restraint grows naturally from this awareness. You stop explaining, defending, or proving. You conserve energy for creation. Clarity is built through subtraction. You remove distractions, emotions, and opinions until only reality remains. The Stoic trims away excess the way a sculptor removes marble. What is left is the clean shape of truth, unpolished but pure. The process is not comfortable. It demands honesty without compromise. Restraint is the mastery of direction. To control reaction is to govern momentum. The person who can remain still in temptation or chaos holds the advantage in every environment. Stillness becomes strategy. Silence becomes structure. Isolation is not a retreat from life. It is preparation for it. The Stoic uses solitude as training for clarity in action. When the noise of the world returns, their perception remains calm. They can see through deceit, through emotion, through chaos, because they have practiced seeing through silence. Restraint under pressure is one of the highest forms of strength. It prevents waste. Anger, defensiveness, and pride drain energy. The disciplined redirect it toward execution. Restraint converts emotion into efficiency. The less you leak, the more you build. Clarity sharpens judgment. The Stoic no longer acts for validation or appearance. Decisions become clean because they are detached from approval. In isolation, you learn that most mistakes come from haste. Time and silence correct perception. The mind stabilizes when it is no longer reacting. Restraint is patience with purpose. It is not passivity, it is control held in reserve. The strongest person in any room is the one who could act, but chooses not to until it is necessary. They move with calculation, not compulsion. This is restraint evolved into wisdom. Isolation refines speech. The Stoic speaks less because they think more. Each word is tested against truth and necessity. When you learn to be silent, your voice gains weight. People listen not because you speak often, but because you speak with accuracy. To see clearly requires detachment from desire. Want distorts perception. The Stoic who practices restraint learns to separate need from want, truth from preference. They stop wishing and start observing. Clarity replaces craving. Restraint creates emotional stability. You begin to understand that reacting to everything is surrendering to everything. The more control you have over response, the less power external forces hold over you. This is how isolation becomes independence. The disciplined person does not rush to fill silence. They allow stillness to reveal what constant motion hides. In that space, solutions appear. Problems dissolve into patterns. The mind that can rest without decay becomes sharp without effort. Clarity requires courage. To see reality as it is demands strength, because truth is rarely flattering. The Stoic accepts discomfort as the cost of insight. They do not seek comfort in illusion. They seek precision in understanding. Restraint sharpens will. Every time you resist distraction, the will strengthens. Every time you withhold unnecessary speech, focus consolidates. These moments accumulate until control becomes instinct. The disciplined mind no longer wastes energy managing chaos. It prevents chaos from forming. In isolation, clarity deepens into discernment. You begin to see the difference between movement and progress, noise and substance, emotion and conviction. The ability to separate what appears from what is becomes a source of peace. You stop chasing illusions disguised as urgency. Restraint under isolation creates power that others can sense. Those who have mastered silence radiate certainty. Their lack of reaction unsettles the impulsive. Their calmness exposes the instability of others. Control itself becomes influence. Clarity is not the absence of confusion. It is the ability to remain steady within it. The Stoic does not demand that the world make sense. They seek to make sense of themselves within the world. This internal order is clarity in motion. Restraint guards clarity from corruption. Every unnecessary emotion invites distortion. Every indulgence dulls perception. The Stoic maintains sharpness by keeping their impulses under discipline. Freedom is preserved through limits. Isolation transforms into awareness when you stop resisting it. The person who can be alone without anxiety becomes ungovernable. They have no dependency to manipulate. Their peace cannot be purchased. This is the autonomy born of solitude. Restraint disciplines ambition. The Stoic channels desire into direction. They pursue excellence without frenzy. Their goals are pursued quietly. their standards enforced privately. Ambition becomes architecture, not appetite. Clarity under isolation teaches proportion. The mind learns to distinguish between what matters briefly and what endures. You begin to prioritize energy toward permanence. Distraction loses gravity because it no longer deceives you. Restraint is a form of self-respect. You stop scattering your time and attention. You act with precision because you value your focus. The Stoic treats attention as sacred currency, spent only on what aligns with principle. Isolation develops patience. The absence of stimulation forces the mind to slow. In that slowing, detail emerges. You begin to notice the subtleties of thought, the texture of emotion, the rhythm of breath. This awareness is the foundation of mastery. Restraint under fatigue separates strength from endurance. Anyone can react when rested. Few can remain composed when depleted. The Stoic trains under exhaustion until calmness becomes unbreakable. This is how control becomes character. Clarity is sustained through routine. The disciplined mind maintains rituals that preserve stillness. Reading, reflection, and exercise become the rhythm of order. Structure protects perception. Without it, the world reclaims your focus. Restraint and clarity form a cycle. The more you restrain, the clearer you see. The clearer you see, the easier restraint becomes. Together they form balance, a mental equilibrium where emotion and reason coexist without conflict. Isolation eventually transitions into presence. You no longer feel separate from life. You move through it without losing form. The Stoic carries clarity like armor, light, invisible and impenetrable. The noise of others no longer enters. Restraint becomes elegance in motion. The Stoic acts with precision, speaks with intention, and withdraws without resentment. Their conduct is defined by control, not compulsion. This restraint radiates authority. Clarity grants direction. You stop chasing every opportunity and start building within your lane. Focus replaces ambition as the engine of progress. The Stoic moves with quiet certainty because they have removed confusion from their path. In the union of clarity and restraint, isolation becomes strength. You are no longer fragmented by noise. Every thought, every action, every moment aligns. This alignment creates peace deeper than comfort, a stillness that cannot be disturbed. The Stoic who masters restraint no longer battles chaos. They outlast it. They do not conquer by force, but by patience. They stand so still that disorder dissolves around them. That is the quiet victory of clarity under isolation, a dominance invisible to noise but absolute in its reach. Perception is the final discipline of the Stoic. It is the lens through which all other virtues are tested. Endurance, restraint, and solitude all prepare the mind to see clearly. When perception becomes pure, reaction loses its grip. The world no longer defines the self. The self defines the world through understanding. Detachment is not distance from life, but precision within it. The Stoic learns to observe events without assigning unnecessary meaning. What happens is neutral. Only perception gives it charge. By mastering perception, you regain control over every internal storm. The mind becomes a clear surface that reflects reality without distortion. Judgment is the highest use of perception. To see without clarity is to act blindly. The disciplined mind evaluates each moment with composure, neither inflated by success nor defeated by struggle. The Stoic understands that outcomes are not good or bad, they are information. This neutrality is power. Detachment sharpens perception because emotion no longer interferes with truth. The mind that can remain calm under chaos sees the full pattern. The impatient see fragments. The calm see systems. The Stoic trains to widen awareness until every variable becomes visible. This is not detachment from responsibility, it is engagement through wisdom. Perception begins with awareness of thought. Most people mistake their interpretations for facts. The Stoic separates the two. They ask, "What is happening? What am I adding to it?" That separation restores objectivity. Emotion loses authority when examined through reason. Judgment matures through silence. The less you react, the more you see. Observation expands in stillness. The disciplined person resists the urge to label, fix, or predict. They allow truth to reveal itself. Patience becomes a method of discovery. Detachment protects energy. The reactive exhaust themselves in every event. The Stoic conserves power through observation. They respond only when action is necessary, not when emotion demands it. Their restraint creates clarity. Their clarity sustains endurance. Perception governs reaction. When you interpret events as neutral, anger dissolves. When you interpret delay as part of process, impatience fades. The world no longer manipulates your emotions because your interpretation belongs only to you. This is internal sovereignty. Detachment refines confidence. You begin to trust your ability to interpret reality correctly. You no longer panic at confusion because you can see beyond it. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to practice calm discernment. This composure radiates authority. Judgment is the difference between movement and mastery. Anyone can act, few can act correctly. The Stoic moves with understanding rather than impulse. Every action is filtered through reason. This filtration removes waste. What remains is pure execution. Perception shapes identity. You become what you see repeatedly. If you focus on loss, you cultivate fear. If you focus on opportunity, you cultivate action. The disciplined mind chooses perception as a deliberate act, not an unconscious habit. Vision becomes design. Detachment is built through exposure. You cannot become unmoved by avoiding difficulty. The Stoic exposes themselves to challenge and practices calm observation. They learn to view chaos as a classroom. Each trial becomes a test of composure. Judgment requires humility. The mind must accept that it can be wrong. The Stoic revises perception constantly, removing bias, pride, and assumption. This correction process strengthens clarity. To judge well, you must first admit blindness. Perception without detachment leads to distortion. Emotion magnifies or diminishes reality depending on desire. The Stoic prevents this by standing apart from both pleasure and pain. They feel both fully, yet allow neither to dictate truth. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means caring precisely, not excessively. The disciplined person gives attention to what is within control and releases what is not. This distinction prevents emotional erosion. Focus remains whole. Judgment becomes reliable only when rooted in principle. The Stoic does not measure events by comfort, but by alignment with virtue. Each decision passes through the filter of wisdom, courage, justice, and discipline. This moral clarity produces consistency under all conditions. Perception is strengthened by solitude. The less external input, the sharper internal awareness becomes. The Stoic uses silence to study the mind's automatic responses. By observing without interference, they dismantle illusion. Truth is revealed not through noise, but through observation. Detachment stabilizes perception in the face of chaos. The disciplined mind sees through the emotion of others without absorbing it. This distance allows accurate reading of people and events. While others drown in reaction, the Stoic navigates through precision. Judgment, in the Stoic sense, is alignment between reason and action. Once perception is clear, conduct must follow. Knowing is meaningless without execution. The Stoic demonstrates understanding through behavior, not expression. Consistency confirms clarity. Perception without control becomes self-deception. The Stoic trains to recognize when bias creeps in. They question motives, timing, and emotion. Each reflection cleanses thought of distortion. The process is ongoing. Mastery never ends. Detachment produces grace under uncertainty. You begin to accept that outcomes are never fully within command. This acceptance breeds serenity. You act fully and release fully. Anxiety loses its foothold because you no longer try to own the uncontrollable. Judgment thrives in slowness. The modern world confuses speed with intelligence. The Stoic understands that pause precedes precision. Every decision is given its proper space. This spacing creates quality, and quality compounds. Perception changes the experience of time. The anxious feel time as pressure. The calm experience it as space. The Stoic elongates the present through awareness. Each moment expands in clarity. This expanded perception reduces haste and strengthens control. Detachment is the foundation of emotional intelligence. It prevents over-identification with feeling. You acknowledge emotion without submission. This relationship creates internal balance, a state of engagement without entanglement. Judgment becomes unshakable when principle outweighs preference. The Stoic decides according to what is right, not what is comfortable. This consistency breeds peace. There is no inner conflict when decisions align with virtue. Perception evolves into intuition once purified by reason. The disciplined mind begins to sense truth instantly because distortion has been removed. Intuition in the Stoic is not impulse but recognition, a result of trained awareness. Detachment enhances connection. By releasing need, you make space for genuine understanding. The Stoic can listen fully because they no longer seek agreement. They observe without ego and therefore see more. Judgment at its highest form is simplicity. Complexity is often confusion in disguise. The Stoic reduces decisions to essentials. What is in my control? What aligns with reason? The simpler the framework, the stronger the execution. Perception leads to serenity when aligned with acceptance. The Stoic does not resist the natural course of events. They move with it, guiding themselves within its flow. Resistance creates friction. Understanding creates freedom. Detachment gives you leverage over life. The less you cling, the more you control. When possession no longer dictates emotion, loss cannot wound deeply. You remain whole in fluctuation. This stability is the mark of maturity. Judgment under adversity reveals mastery. Anyone can see clearly in calm conditions. The Stoic measures their perception when chaos rises. If they can remain just, composed, and deliberate, clarity has become character. Perception is not passive, it is creative. The disciplined mind shapes experience through interpretation. The world reflects the quality of your focus. The Stoic uses perception as a tool of construction to build peace where others find turmoil. Detachment removes dependence on outcomes. You continue to act because action aligns with principle, not because it guarantees reward. This independence turns effort into strength. Failure loses its sting when meaning is drawn from conduct itself. Judgment is what remains when emotion has passed. It is the residue of thought purified by reason. The Stoic seeks to live from that residue, clean, stable, and exact. Each decision affirms mastery over self. Perception concludes where wisdom begins, in acceptance of complexity without confusion. The Stoic does not need the world to simplify, they maintain simplicity within it. This inner clarity is unbreakable. detachment and perception together form equanimity. Nothing external can disturb a mind that understands itself. The world continues in motion, but the Stoic stands centered, seeing all without losing form. Judgment, when perfected, becomes serenity in motion. The Stoic no longer reacts or resists. They act in harmony with reason, detached from outcome, clear in perception, and composed in conduct. This is unshakable judgment, the quiet strength of one who has mastered sight. Inner dominance is the summit of self-mastery. It is not the control of others, but the absolute governance of one's inner world. The Stoic who reaches this height no longer battles emotion, distraction, or doubt. They direct them as tools. Every impulse becomes an instrument of intention. The self no longer argues with itself, it commands. True dominance begins where resistance ends. The disciplined mind does not fight against weakness. It absorbs it, studies it, and repurposes it. Fear becomes alertness. Anger becomes energy. Doubt becomes analysis. Every inner movement is redirected toward creation. Nothing is wasted inside the dominant mind. Inner dominance is the art of sovereignty without aggression. The person does not shout their strength. They radiate it through stillness. When the inner dialogue becomes order, every external challenge feels smaller. The world bends toward those who no longer depend on it for equilibrium. The Stoic understands that power cannot be taken from within. It can only be surrendered. Each time you lose control to impulse, emotion, or chaos, you yield authority. Each moment of restraint reclaims it. Inner dominance is built not through conquest, but through non-surrender. To dominate the self requires perfect awareness. You cannot command what you do not see. Observation is control in its purest form. The Stoic watches their own thoughts the way a strategist studies terrain. Nothing passes without examination. Each reaction is measured, every assumption tested. The dominant mind does not suppress emotion, it integrates it. Suppression is fragility disguised as strength. Integration is mastery disguised as calm. The Stoic feels everything but is moved by nothing without consent. Emotion becomes a servant, not a saboteur. In solitude, dominance is refined through repetition. Each day of consistent action strengthens self-trust. The more you prove control to yourself, the more your authority solidifies. You begin to operate with quiet certainty, immune to confusion. Doubt still appears, but it has no command. Dominance over self dissolves the need for approval. When you can regulate your own mind, you are no longer dependent on reaction from others. The opinions of the crowd become background noise. Validation becomes irrelevant because confidence is self-generated. Inner dominance removes chaos from time. You stop rushing because urgency is emotional, not strategic. Each action is deliberate, measured, and clean. You move according to rhythm, not reaction. The disciplined person understands that power grows from pacing, not haste. The Stoic who commands themselves controls every room they enter. People sense their stability. They may not understand it, but they respond to it. Composure is magnetic because it is rare. In a world ruled by impulse, calmness becomes authority. Dominance over the self requires detachment from outcome. When you can act without being enslaved by success or failure, your power becomes absolute. The external world can no longer bargain with your emotions. You act from principle, not from reward. Every moment of discipline is a declaration of control. Each decision against comfort strengthens sovereignty. The Stoic does not ask what feels good. They ask what builds strength. They have trained their impulses to align with purpose. The mind under dominance becomes a command center. Every thought, emotion, and reaction is processed with precision. The result is efficiency. Energy once wasted on hesitation now fuels execution. Confusion becomes clarity through structure. Self-discipline evolves into self-respect. When you consistently obey your principles, you begin to trust yourself completely. This trust is the foundation of inner dominance. A person who trusts their own direction is ungovernable. To dominate the self is to eliminate internal noise. The endless chatter of insecurity, envy, and comparison fades. Focus sharpens into a single line of intent. Each day becomes a continuation of command. This silence within is not emptiness, it is strength contained. Inner dominance creates predictability of conduct. Others may fluctuate under emotion. The Stoic remains steady. This consistency becomes reputation. People rely on the disciplined because their behavior is not dictated by mood. Predictability becomes a form of leadership. Dominance is sustained through standards. Once established, standards do not bend. You adapt methods, not morals. The disciplined person holds principle as law. They treat themselves as both ruler and subject. Each command is obeyed internally before it manifests externally. The Stoic learns to speak to themselves with authority. The internal voice becomes command language, short, direct, precise. There is no negotiation with laziness or fear. The body moves because the mind has decided. Each act reinforces control until compliance becomes instinct. Dominance does not require perfection, it requires governance. The Stoic accepts error without collapse. They correct, adjust, and continue. Failure is not rebellion, it is feedback. The disciplined person treats mistakes as temporary breaks in formation, not personal defeats. Inner dominance transforms adversity into training. Every challenge becomes an arena for control. Anger tests composure, delay tests patience, and failure tests perseverance. The Stoic views each as an opportunity to demonstrate order under pressure. To dominate emotion, you must understand it. The Stoic studies feelings the way a craftsman studies tools. Each has a purpose when directed correctly. Anger sharpens focus, fear sharpens awareness, sadness deepens understanding. The key is intention. Dominance requires structure in thought. The disciplined organize their minds as one organizes a fortress. Every idea has its place, every memory its meaning. This mental architecture prevents invasion by chaos. You cannot be shaken if your thoughts are fortified. The highest form of inner dominance is self-trust during uncertainty. When the outcome is unclear and external control is impossible, the Stoic turns inward. Their confidence does not depend on prediction, but on preparation. They know they will respond correctly, regardless of result. Dominance over self breeds precision in action. You no longer overextend or underact. Each movement is exact because it originates from stillness. The Stoic does not waste motion. Efficiency becomes their language of control. Inner dominance simplifies life. Decisions that once caused turmoil become automatic. You no longer debate discipline or duty. They are reflexes. This automation of strength allows focus on higher strategy. When order becomes nature, energy is liberated for purpose. The Stoic does not seek dominance over others because it is a distraction from mastery. The person obsessed with control externally is usually ungoverned internally. True command is inward. When the mind is conquered, influence follows naturally. Dominance without humility decays into arrogance. The Stoic maintains balance by remembering that control is service, not superiority. The disciplined mind directs its power toward improvement, not display. This humility preserves clarity. Inner dominance transforms the experience of pressure. What breaks others strengthens the Stoic. They interpret weight as opportunity. The more responsibility they carry, the calmer they become. Pressure organizes the disciplined, it disorients the weak. The dominant mind views comfort as instability. Ease dulls awareness. The Stoic periodically returns to discomfort to sharpen command. Hunger, solitude, silence. These are not punishments but renewals of control. Inner dominance expands through observation of failure without emotion. When you can analyze your own mistakes without defensiveness, growth accelerates. Emotion blurs feedback. Detachment clarifies it. The Stoic improves not through blame, but through precision. Dominance requires protection of focus. Distraction is the erosion of authority. The disciplined guard their attention like territory. They decide what enters their mind and what does not. This selectivity preserves clarity. The Stoics' dominance is quiet but absolute. They do not need to prove power because it is visible in their composure. Their decisions are final because they are founded on discipline. The world recognizes authority in conduct before it hears it in words. Self-mastery culminates when discipline becomes identity. You no longer force yourself to act correctly. It happens automatically. The ruler and the ruled have become one. This is the apex of inner dominance, a state where will and action are indistinguishable. The disciplined person moves through life as both architect and guardian of their own order. Their presence communicates stability. Their silence commands respect. They do not dominate through fear, but through consistency. This quiet control is indestructible because it originates within. To walk alone and win alone is to reach this level of dominance. You no longer depend on approval, motivation, or recognition. You are sustained by internal law. The mind has become its own empire, self-ruled, self-directed, and self-sufficient. That is the essence of unshakable power, dominance without dependence, strength without noise. Total mental sovereignty is the final evolution of the disciplined mind. It is a state where thought, emotion, and intention are unified under deliberate control. The Stoic no longer reacts to life. They conduct it. Every movement within is chosen. Every response is calculated. The chaos of thought has been replaced by a quiet architecture of awareness. Sovereignty begins when awareness becomes constant. You no longer drift between clarity and confusion. Each moment is seen as it is, without distortion. The disciplined mind watches every rise of emotion, every shift in thought, without being swept away. Observation becomes dominance. Emotional command is not repression. It is the art of feeling everything without being ruled by anything. The Stoic allows emotion to surface, but only under supervision. They treat emotion as a guest, not a master. Anger may knock, fear may whisper, joy may flare, but none are given control of the house. Sovereignty is the capacity to choose perception. You decide how to interpret events. You decide what meaning to assign, what weight to give, what focus to apply. This is the ultimate freedom, the power to define experience through perspective. Nothing external can command a mind that governs its own interpretation. The sovereign mind does not divide itself between desire and reason. It aligns them. Desire becomes directed, reason becomes alive. There is no internal war because purpose unites all parts. The Stoic understands that conflict within is the root of weakness. Unity within is the root of power. To govern the mind is to master attention. Every thought competes for control. The disciplined decide who wins. Focus becomes the currency of power. The sovereign mind spends it wisely on creation, reflection, and action. Distraction no longer exists. It has been removed from possibility. Emotional command transforms the experience of pain. What once triggered avoidance now becomes study. The Stoic analyzes discomfort the way a craftsman examines material. They ask, "What can this teach me? Where does this lead?" Pain becomes a form of intelligence when approached with composure. Mental sovereignty removes the dependency on external calm. The environment may change, but equilibrium remains. You no longer require quiet to find peace. You bring peace into noise. The disciplined mind becomes an anchor in every storm. To control emotion, you must understand its function. Every feeling is a signal. Anger points to boundaries crossed. Fear warns of uncertainty. Sadness reveals attachment. The Stoic decodes emotion without judgment. They learn the language of feeling without losing fluency in reason. The sovereign mind has no wasted motion. Thought flows in straight lines. Reflection is clean, precise, functional. Every idea either strengthens the system or is discarded. Efficiency becomes beauty. The mind operates like a disciplined army, silent, organized, undefeatable. Emotional command requires constant vigilance. The disciplined mind monitors itself without obsession. It notices tension, expectation, and reaction as they appear. Awareness interrupts momentum before emotion gains control. In this awareness, freedom lives. Sovereignty replaces reaction with decision. There is no panic because there is process. When chaos strikes, the Stoic follows sequence. Observe, interpret, act. The world may shift, but the method remains. Predictability in conduct becomes power in crisis. The mind that commands itself no longer fears emotion. It uses emotion as energy. The Stoic channels anger into precision, fear into strategy, and love into loyalty. Nothing within is wasted. Everything serves the will. Mental sovereignty breeds emotional neutrality. This neutrality is not apathy, it is equilibrium. You feel deeply, yet nothing drags you from balance. The highs and lows of life become symmetrical. The Stoic moves through both with identical composure. Total control does not mean suppression, it means proportion. Every feeling has its place, its weight, its duration. The disciplined mind knows when to express and when to withhold. Expression without control is noise. Restraint without awareness is repression. The Stoic lives between those extremes. Emotional command grants consistency. When others fluctuate, you remain stable. When others doubt, you continue. When others collapse, you adapt. People trust the composed because composure implies strength. This trust becomes influence earned through steadiness. The sovereign mind has mastered recovery. It does not dwell on mistakes or cling to victories. Each experience is processed, extracted for value, and released. The past does not linger because the mind does not permit repetition of useless memory. Forward motion is law. Emotional mastery creates clarity under pressure. The Stoic does not seek calm through escape, but through engagement. They enter difficulty with focus, not fear. Every obstacle becomes familiar terrain. The greater the chaos, the greater the composure. Sovereignty turns discipline into identity. The person no longer practices control, they are control. The effort once required becomes instinct. Decisions are made without debate. The inner dialogue is quiet because command has become nature. To achieve this state, the Stoic builds an inner hierarchy. Reason sits at the top. Emotion serves as advisor, never as ruler. Impulse is the worker, powerful but supervised. This structure ensures order even in uncertainty. The hierarchy holds no matter the circumstance. The sovereign mind does not fear silence. It thrives in it. Silence is the natural environment of control. It allows for examination, correction, and recalibration. The undisciplined avoid silence because it exposes disorder. The Stoic seeks it because it reveals truth. Emotional command refines empathy. The Stoic understands others not by merging with their emotion, but by observing it clearly. Detachment allows understanding without contamination. This clarity makes their guidance valuable. They see what others cannot. Mental sovereignty transforms adversity into refinement. Each crisis becomes a sharpening stone. The mind grows stronger under pressure because it has been trained to remain stable while adapting. The Stoic emerges from hardship more organized than before. Sovereignty also means ownership of thought. You no longer inherit beliefs from the world. You choose them deliberately. Every conviction is tested, every assumption interrogated. The result is independence of mind, truth tailored through reason, not imitation. The disciplined mind becomes impossible to manipulate. Flattery, threat, or appeal to emotion no longer shift its direction. The Stoic listens but does not yield. Their compass is internal. Influence ends where conviction begins. Emotional command protects against fatigue. Most exhaustion is emotional, not physical. The Stoic conserves energy by refusing unnecessary reaction. Calmness restores what chaos consumes. Each moment of restraint replenishes strength. Mental sovereignty produces decisiveness. When perception is clear and emotion is balanced, hesitation disappears. The Stoic acts swiftly because they see directly. Their choices carry weight because they originate from stillness, not noise. The sovereign mind maintains gratitude without attachment. It appreciates fortune without dependence. It can lose without collapse because value has been internalized. Nothing external defines the inner equilibrium. Emotional mastery creates radiance without expression. The Stoic emanates power through absence of tension. Their eyes remain steady, their movements measured. They project assurance without aggression. This is influence born from balance. To sustain sovereignty, the mind must continue refinement. Control is not a destination, it is a state of maintenance. Each day tests order, each challenge tests presence. The disciplined welcome this because repetition keeps power alive. The Stoic knows that true freedom is self-imposed discipline. Without control, desire enslaves. Without awareness, thought deceives. Without restraint, emotion consumes. Sovereignty is freedom through structure. Order is liberation. The sovereign mind no longer divides the world into good or bad. It sees only cause and effect. Every outcome becomes usable. There is no loss, only data. This neutrality eliminates despair. The Stoic walks through both victory and defeat unchanged. Emotional command creates invisibility. The disciplined reveal nothing they do not choose to. Their silence is unreadable, their presence unshaken. They control the field by controlling themselves. Others react, they remain still. Sovereignty over mind grants the ultimate advantage, continuity. While others burn in cycles of emotion and fatigue, the Stoic remains steady. Their progress is uninterrupted because their energy is never wasted. Continuity becomes dominance. In this state, discipline transforms into peace. Control no longer feels heavy, it feels effortless. The mind functions like a tuned instrument, responsive, exact, serene. The Stoic has achieved harmony between effort and ease. To rule the mind is to end internal conflict. Thought, emotion, and action align under one direction. This alignment generates clarity, and clarity generates power. The world bends naturally around those who govern themselves. The sovereign mind moves through life without noise. It does not announce, explain, or justify. Its authority is visible in stillness, its strength measured by composure. That is total mental sovereignty, the condition where mastery is quiet because it is complete. Permanence begins where struggle ends. The Stoic who has walked alone, endured, restrained and mastered the mind, now stands in stillness, not as retreat, but as completion. The noise that once dictated movement has quieted. Every action is now born from deliberate order. The path no longer feels uncertain because the individual has become the path itself. To reach this state is to understand that strength without calm is chaos. True power is quiet, structured and unreactive. The person who has achieved inner dominance no longer seeks victory in battle. They maintain victory in existence. Their composure is constant because it is not situational, it is structural. The Stoic becomes a monument of stillness. Nothing external can provoke instability. Praise and criticism sound the same, irrelevant. Gain and loss hold the same weight, none. This neutrality is not detachment from life, it is alignment with its rhythm. You no longer resist change, you move within it without distortion. Discipline matures into essence. It is no longer a practice, but an identity. Each habit, each decision, each restraint has condensed into nature. The mind does not fight to remain focused. It simply is. The body does not resist fatigue. It flows through it with balance. Effort has become harmony. The journey through solitude, endurance, restraint and sovereignty has stripped away illusion. What remains is pure principle, a person reduced to order. The Stoic lives by inner law, unchanging and self-enforcing. They no longer chase outcomes because their very conduct ensures them. Success is not pursued. It is produced as a byproduct of structure. Permanence is built through constancy. Every act done with integrity compounds. Each repetition strengthens foundation. Over time, the self becomes immovable because it is no longer dependent on emotion or external approval. The disciplined life becomes its own reward. In this final evolution, calmness replaces ambition. The Stoic understands that ambition without peace creates exhaustion. Peace with ambition creates direction. Every movement serves purpose. Every pause reinforces power. This is balance achieved through years of order. The person who has reached permanence does not announce mastery. They embody it. Their presence communicates discipline without words. Their stillness carries authority. The world recognizes stability without being told. Leadership becomes silent influence, a gravity that pulls others into alignment. This state cannot be faked because it is built from repetition of truth. Each day lived in accordance with principle becomes another brick in permanence. The individual no longer drifts between states of clarity and confusion. They remain steady regardless of circumstance. That is what separates strength from appearance. The Stoic who has walked this path no longer seeks motivation. Motivation belongs to those who still depend on emotion to act. The sovereign operates from principle. Action is constant, whether inspired or not. This is the ultimate liberation, to function at full capacity without the need for external stimulation. Calm becomes command. Stillness becomes strength. The ability to remain unmoved becomes the greatest power in a world built on reaction. The Stoics' restraint becomes weaponry. Their patience becomes advantage. Every moment of silence holds the weight of discipline earned. Those who have not walked alone cannot understand this state. They measure strength by aggression and confidence by volume. The Stoic knows that noise hides weakness and chaos hides insecurity. True confidence does not need exposure, it needs continuity. Permanence is not stagnation, it is mastery of rhythm. The disciplined adapt without losing identity. They evolve without abandoning principle. They bend without breaking. This flexibility within integrity is the hallmark of the Stoic path, unshakable yet alive. When solitude becomes peace, you no longer fear separation. When discipline becomes nature, you no longer struggle with consistency. When control becomes instinct, you no longer depend on conditions. These transitions mark the arrival of the unbreakable state. The Stoic does not eliminate emotion, they have ordered it. Joy no longer intoxicates, sadness no longer disables. Each emotion enters, serves its function, and leaves. The equilibrium remains. This constancy allows for deep living, feeling fully without surrendering to feeling. Permanence means clarity without effort. The fog of indecision has lifted because every choice is filtered through virtue. There is no debate, no turmoil, no hesitation. The disciplined act with precision because their principles are pre-decided. They do not question order, they execute it. The person who has reached this height carries serenity into every environment. In chaos, they remain exact. In peace, they remain vigilant. Their stability is not conditional on circumstance, it is an internal climate. They are their own weather, unaffected by external storms. The mind that governs itself governs fate. The Stoic knows that control of self is control of destiny. When the internal realm is ordered, the external world aligns. This is not mysticism, it is mechanics. The disciplined create conditions through conduct. The path of walking alone, winning alone, and mastering the self leads to simplicity. Complexity fades when clarity dominates. You stop chasing the unimportant. You stop explaining to the unaware. You conserve words and double your focus. Power becomes direction. The world becomes quiet around those who have mastered themselves. Conflict finds no reaction. Provocation meets no return. The Stoic does not suppress, they surpass. They have moved beyond reaction into governance. Their silence is not absence, it is presence in perfect balance. To live in permanence is to understand time differently. The impatient count days, the disciplined count continuities. Each day is another expression of principle, not another chase for reward. This perception transforms existence into a steady current of progress. The Stoic's calmness does not come from detachment, but from design. Their life is built with structure that protects peace. Their habits are walls, their reflections are gates. Within that architecture, emotion cannot reign. The result is composure that lasts beyond circumstance. Those who maintain order internally become immune to manipulation. No one can provoke a reaction that does not exist. No one can deceive a mind that sees clearly. The Stoics' perception has been trained to separate truth from noise. Their calm is built on intelligence, not passivity. To reach permanence, one must surrender the desire for control over others. The disciplined focus only on mastery of self. Influence becomes natural, not pursued. The world respects precision more than persuasion. The Stoic influences by being complete. Stillness is the highest form of presence. The disciplined person enters a room and alters it without effort. People feel structure without seeing it. This is the invisible power of command, derived from internal order, not external expression. The Stoic who has achieved permanence no longer distinguishes between practice and life. Every action is aligned, every moment reflects the whole. Integrity becomes seamless. They no longer think of discipline, they are discipline. Permanence requires humility. To remain aligned, you must continually correct. The disciplined never assume arrival. Each day renews the order. Each moment reinforces the structure. Mastery sustains itself through maintenance. When you no longer need to prove control, you have reached mastery. The proof lies in the absence of reaction. The Stoic stillness is not forced, it is earned. Their mind no longer fluctuates with outcomes. Their conduct remains identical in all conditions. The disciplined life becomes a legacy of presence. Without speeches, without claims, the person leaves impact through example. People remember their composure, not their rhetoric. They remember their steadiness, not their ambition. That is the true mark of mastery, influence through order. Permanence is a state where nothing external can define the internal. Fortune may shift, seasons may change, but identity does not. The Stoic remains clear, structured, and exact. Their peace is built, not borrowed. To walk alone and win alone is to arrive here, where solitude is no longer separation, but clarity, where control is no longer effort, but nature. You do not seek to dominate, you exist in dominance. The mind has become its own empire, calm and absolute. The path was never about achievement. It was about becoming unmovable. Each test was construction. Each hardship was refinement. Each silence was instruction. The Stoic stands complete, not because life has calmed, but because they have. Permanence is the end of reaction and the beginning of pure direction. The disciplined move without friction, think without confusion, and live without dependence. This is the unspoken victory of the Stoic path: to stand alone, to remain calm, and to be unshakable forever.